Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. I'll give you guys a moment to come on in. Hello, good evening, everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining again this week. We have some new immigration updates that I'm going to be talking to you about. And for those who are joining us for the first time, I'm Kay Wilson, Regulated Canadian Immigration Consultant, and I'm joining you from Regina in Saskatchewan. Awesome. And so happy Friday. Yes, happy Friday. So I will be brief with you guys this evening so you can enjoy your weekend, enjoy your Friday evening. There has been and always is a lot that's happening in the realms of Canadian immigration. Welcome, Sasha. Sasha says it's her first time here. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Where are you joining from? And if you're watching the replay as well, let me know where you're joining me from today. All right. So today I have a couple topics that I'm going to touch on briefly, just very briefly. So we're going to talk about, the recent PNP draws. So PNPs, stand for Provincial Nominee Program. So we have a couple of Provincial Nominee Program draws that happened in the last week. Northwest Territories. So we're going to talk about the Northwest Territory Nominee Program and the Innovation Stream Pilot. I know we've been getting a lot of questions from you guys as well, where that pilot is concerned. So I'll talk about it a little bit this evening, as well as potential changes. Yes, more changes potentially on the horizon for the study permit program. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Listen keenly if you are planning to come and study in Canada, or in the process of doing that, or are currently in Canada studying. Okay, so you would want to make sure that you stay tuned for that, and then I'll close it off with some Q&As as time permits. Okay, so I am actually just gonna dive right in. So the first thing I want to touch on is the PNPs. So as I have previously mentioned, like the PNPs are the Provincial Nominee Programs. They, outside of Express Entry, those are going to be like your go-to programs for immigrating to Canada. A large percentage of the planned immigration numbers for this year and for the next 2 years have been allocated to the Provincial Nominee Program. So if you are looking to come to Canada, you definitely want to be aware of the PNPs and which ones may be relevant to you. Okay. Yeah, so you want to get that, you want to be aware of that. So the PNPs, especially Ontario, of late, Ontario has been very, very active with their program draws. They've been having a number of different draws, and the most recent one was yesterday, July 25th. Hope you guys can hear me. Somebody's... Yeah, so Ontario had a draw yesterday where they invited candidates under so there's this one of the streams in Ontario that's aligned with Express Entries called the Human Capital Priorities stream. And in that stream, they tend to do a number of draws. So it's very active, and it's not a program that you can make a direct application to. It's one of those programs that's aligned with Express Entry. So if you are in the Express Entry pool and your profile is set up properly, you know, and your NOC is in any of the NOCs that are targeting, or that are being targeted by Ontario, then you could potentially get an invitation or a notice of interest letter from that province. So the July 25th draw, they invited 209 candidates. And this draw was primarily focused on general practitioners and family physicians. So those were the candidates that they focused on. And the comprehensive ranking system score for this particular draw, it ranged from 395 to 444. So it's not very high. It was not a very high cutoff score. So that makes this a very attractive program. The draw that happened prior to this, also Ontario, same stream, they drew on the 18th. I've had a few clients who were invited under this one as well. This one is a healthcare draw. So they had a draw for healthcare workers, and they had a number of different occupations that were invited. So they invited 1,240 candidates, and the cutoff scores for the comprehensive ranking system was 425 to 444. So in that range, right? And occupations, I won't be able to name all of them, but I'll just give you guys an idea of some of the occupations that were invited in this particular draw. So they had opticians, they had paramedics, they had LPNs, they had dietitians and psychologists. Just think about healthcare occupations, right? They had healthcare managers, dentists, pharmacists, a whole long list. They had pharmacy technicians, and massage therapists. They had nurses' aides that were drawn here as well, and dental assistants. There was a whole long list of occupations. So that's just, you know, a sample of some of the occupations that were invited. So I guess the takeaway from this is, if you have work experience in these occupations, or in healthcare in general, you know, you may want to definitely check out to see what your options are where that's concerned. Okay, if it's your plan to either come to Canada, so to migrate to Canada, or to remain in Canada if you already are here. Okay, so very active stream in Ontario. Then the next one I'm going to go to is PEI, Prince Edward Island. So on July 19th, they had a draw. So generally with PEI, their draws are scheduled. So they had a draw on the 19th, and they invited about 86 candidates. And in this draw, they invited skilled workers, again, skilled workers in healthcare and construction for this one, as well as those in manufacturing and professional services. So this one had, you know, a variety of different industries that were represented. Some of these candidates were candidates who were already in Canada with existing work permits, right? So you will have, with these program draws, it may be a mixture. It could account for candidates who are in Canada, as well as candidates who are outside Canada. And then also with PEI, they also invited 2 candidates under their business work permit entrepreneur stream. So most provinces, they will have an entrepreneur stream that will cater to those who are looking at either assuming a business in Canada, so taking over a business, or starting a business in Canada in that particular province. And each of the provinces will have their own, requirements in terms of potential capital to be invested, or the net worth of the owner, and so on, the investor. So they'll have different requirements. Now I'm going to go to British Columbia. So that's in BC on July 23rd. BC is also one of those provinces that generally is very active with the PNP draws. So they had a draw on the 23rd, and they issued 108 invitations to apply for permanent residence in British Columbia. And this draw was a mixture of different categories in terms of occupation. So they had a general draw where they focused on international graduates. So that those would be international graduates who may have studied in the province, and are now working there, right? Or skilled workers who have a job offer in the province. They also invited from occupations in childcare. So one of the things that you'll find in abundance in British Columbia these days will be childcare vacancies. So they're always looking for early childhood educators, for example. So childcare, construction, healthcare, and vet care. So those were the different categories that particular draw focused on. Now I'm going to move through these quickly. So the next one is Manitoba. So July 18th, Manitoba had a draw, and they invited 161 candidates. And this was done through the International Education Stream and the Skilled Workers Overseas. So two categories for Manitoba. Generally their International Education Stream is focused on those who have studied in Manitoba. They do have a category for those who have studied outside Manitoba, but generally you'll have to find a job there first and also get some work experience with a Manitoba employer. They also have a Skilled Workers Overseas category that was also included in this draw. For the Skilled Workers Overseas, you don't have to be in Canada, as the name suggests. You can be overseas. However, you'll need to have a connection to Manitoba. The connection could be, having a relative who live in Manitoba, or a friend. Some sort of connection to Manitoba is a key requirement. So those are the draws that I wanted to highlight, and those would have happened, within the last week or so. All right, so now I'm going to move on to the Northwest Territories. I don't know if many of you are familiar with the Northwest Territories. So the Northwest Territories, they have a nominee program. They are the NWT, as it's often called. They are in Canada's north, as the name suggests. The Northwest Territories, they're one of Canada's 3 territories. And they generally, with provincial and territorial programs, the immigration is generally governed federally, and then the allocations to the various provinces and territories are made and provided to the provinces to administer. So for the Northwest Territory, they had they reached a big milestone, I would say, for the territory, right? I don't know if you're not familiar with the territories in Canada, I would recommend doing some research. Look up the Northwest Territories, look up the Yukon, Nunavut. So those are the 3 territories, and you can do some research to see what life is like in Canada's north, right? Remember, Canada is generally cold, right, overall, and so if you're gonna go to the territories, the northern part, it's gonna definitely be a lot colder. And life in general, I would say life in general feels very different in the different provinces, let alone the territories, right? But so a lot more interest is being shown in the territories, as we're seeing with the Northwest Territories today. So for the first time in their program history, they have reached their application caps. And this is telling you a lot that, you know, a lot more people are interested in coming to Canada, and a lot more people are willing to go to, you know, these different places. So the cap that was reached is 300. So their allocation for like this particular stream was 300 for the year. And then for the first time, like I said, they have reached that maximum intake cap. And so they have paused applications for this intake, for this particular program for the rest of the year. They're still accepting a few applications, few exceptions to the rule, but generally there are no more applications. Just to show you what the numbers looked like before, right? And these programs, I must say, like this particular stream, it's an employer-driven stream. So candidates who are applying under this employer-driven stream or the Francophone stream for the Northwest Territory, generally with the employer-driven streams, you'll need to have an employer. You'll need to have a job offer, right? And so in previous years, like in last year, 2023, the applications that they received, or the nominations, were 139. So that's a significant jump to this year, you know, just halfway through the year, and they have already reached the cap, the max nominations that they can make through the stream. In 2022, it was 100, and in 2021, it was 62. So it's a significant milestone for them. And what they now want to do as a territory, they now want to request from the federal government to say, hey, this is an indicator that we need to have our allocation for nomination increased, because, you know, more people are interested in coming to the territories. And of course, that means growth in the economy for the territory with the more people that they can attract. So a few resources for you guys. As I mentioned, that do some research on the territories. You can look up this Northwest Territory program. And the program itself, as I mentioned, is employer driven. But I'm going to give you guys a couple websites that you can use if you are interested in going to the Northwest Territories. So they do have a couple job boards, and it's the North. I guess you have certain benefits because you're going outside of, you know, the mainstream Canada, the provinces, and you're going to the North. So generally, like folks who live in the northern part of Canada, they'll get like northern allowance, and there's, you know, other benefits that they'll receive as a result of living in that that region. So we have Nunavut News Job Board. What we'll probably do for you guys, we'll put the links in the stories so that you guys can visit the various sites. So there's one called Jobs North Edge. That one, so the website is edgenorth.ca, and that's where you can find jobs in the Northwestern Territories. That's one of the job boards. There is of course, the government of Northwest Territories. They are a major employer as well. So if you Google Government of Northwest Territories jobs, you'll also see jobs with the government. And generally, when you work in the North, like I mentioned, you have a lot more benefits because of the distance to go there, and, you know, other things that you probably will be compromising on living in the northern parts of the country. And Nunavut News Job Board. So like I said, we'll post the links for you guys. We'll probably put them in the stories, and you can, you know, have a field day, do your job searches, apply and see what happens, especially because we've been getting a lot of inquiries from you as well where jobs are concerned and searching and all of that. So these are some resources that you guys can use in that regard. Then the next one I'm going to touch on is the Innovation Stream pilot. So the government of Canada launched this pilot. It was announced earlier in the year and it's now launched, so it's now an active program. They launched the project as part of a project that's called the Global Hypergrowth Project. And this is a project that the government of Canada has partnered with and selected certain Canadian companies or companies that are located in Canada and that are contributing significantly to Canada's development. You know, the economy. They are institutions that are innovative in terms of the products or the services that they offer. Most of them will be service-based. And so the government is helping them to ensure that they have all the resources that they need to continue to accelerate their growth, essentially. So one of the key things is recruitment is not the only thing, but it's one of the key things that they'll be helping them to ensure that they have access to talent that they'll need in order to overcome some of the challenges that a lot of employers are currently facing in terms of finding skilled labor. So the pilot aims to streamline the process for these Canadian businesses. So it's not for a company to participate in this pilot, they have to be selected, right? So the pilot is set to streamline the process, the recruitment process, especially the recruitment of foreign workers, to be more specific, to streamline that process for Canadian businesses, and so that they can recruit highly skilled workers, foreign workers, without the need for an LMIA. So this is huge because, I mean, all companies in Canada, unless there's some exceptions, right? They generally need to have unless the candidate or maybe where they're from or there's a trade agreement or something like that. But outside of that, the employer would need to obtain an LMIA in order to hire a foreign worker. So with this particular innovation stream pilot and the partnership between the government and the selected companies, they will be able to hire, so they can literally provide you with an offer of employment and you can apply for a work permit without needing an LMIA. So it is a very good program. Through the program, foreign workers can then receive their work permits and they will have, you know, validity of up to 5 years. That's also an exception because generally, like for LMIA, most LMIA offers, you're looking at your work permit validity being up to 2 years. Okay, so with this one, the validity of the work permits can be up to 5 years. There are a few companies, about 7 or 8 companies that are participating in the pilot program. And so we have Clio, for example. Clio is a software company. So a lot of them are, like I said, are going to be in tech or some sort of innovation. So eligibility for this pilot. One is a job offer. So it has to be a high-skilled job offer. And high-skilled meaning it's, you know, within tier 0 to 3 of the NOC. And then, of course, the job offer must be with one of these participating companies. And then you must, as that candidate, you must meet the requirements on the NOC for education. So if the offer is made in whatever the NOC is, so if it's like an IT manager, an IT technician, whatever the NOC code is for that, on the face of the NOC, you'll see the education requirements. So what they're saying essentially is you must meet the education requirements as well for the particular NOC that you're getting the job offer in. They promise to have faster processing times for those job offers that fall within tiers 0 to 1. So tier 0 and 1 tiers. And when you apply for your work permit through this stream, of course, because you're getting a job offer from a specific employer, it will be a closed work permit. So with a closed work permit, you can only work for the employer that's stated on your work permit. Another benefit, because it's for high-skilled workers, what will happen is you can also have family member accompany you. So if you have a spouse, for example, your spouse can apply for an open work permit. And if you have a dependent child or children, they can also apply to accompany you as well. So it's a really great program. If you want to learn more, I think we posted some info about this particular pilot. But if you want to see a list of the participating employers, visit our website. So it's nccanadaimmigration.com. There's actually a blog there that details the employers who are participating, and it also has a link to each of their website where you can actually go on and look at their job board and see if there's anything that they have that you may want to apply for. Okay, so really great pilot, and I really hope that answers some of your questions. I know we've been getting a lot of questions about that. Then finally, I'm going to talk about some proposed changes that will be happening to the international student program. So, and these are proposed changes that, IRCC wants to make. They have been announced. They've been put forward, I should say. So they have been put forward. Generally, if the government wants to make a change to an act or regulation, then they have to release that in advance. So in this case, the announcement was made in the Canada Gazette. And so it listed some of the proposed changes that the government wants to enact where the international student program is concerned. And it's currently open for stakeholder comments. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's where it is currently. So I'll go through some of the issues that they have identified and why they want to make some of these changes. So IRCC, so that's Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, they want to make some amendments to the regulations. So that's the immigration regulations that would govern study permit application. So this is the section that would impact that particular program. So what they have highlighted is that they have seen a significant growth in the recent years, and I agree with this. Like, they have welcomed over so just last year, 2023 alone, they welcomed over 1 million international students, and this is at all levels, right? So we're talking about primary, secondary, and post-secondary levels. So they had over 1 million study permit holders in 2023. And as I mentioned before, currently the international the temporary residence population right now is over 2.8 million. So large numbers. And so IRCC has basically noted that they've identified some areas that they would want to strengthen and make improvements to, with the goal of improving the integrity of the program, and so that they can better support international students and make the system more efficient, right? So, and I'll talk a little bit about the issues that they have identified. So one is DLI reporting. So DLI stands for Designated Learning Institution, And these DLIs are these represent the institutions that can admit or accept international students, right? So essentially what they're saying is under the current regulations, DLIs are responsible for reporting student enrollment to IRCC. So if you were issued a study permit, you would have been, registered with a particular institution. Periodically, that institution is to report to IRCC regarding enrollment of students who are attending that institution. They're also responsible for verifying letters of acceptance. So you would have, you may have known, like in last year, they implemented this verification system where now your letter of acceptance must be verified by your institution in order for you to be issued a study permit in the first place. So what IRCC is saying is that they don't have a regulatory mechanism to really compel DLIs to do their reporting and also to complete the verification process like within a certain timeline. And they don't have a reliable way to determine whether a student that's attending a DLI is in fact doing so if the DLI does not report. So right now the reporting is essentially not mandated, right? It's an administrative process that's done, but they want this to be a part of the regulation so it becomes law. So if a DLI does not do it, then because it is law, then there would be consequences essentially. The second issue that they have is their inability to impose, the same thing I just mentioned, inability to impose sanctions on non-compliant DLIs. Okay, so and I guess the repercussions would be if they're able to, or if DLIs are not compliant with some of these things, for example, then there would of course be due process, but then they could at least at some point decide that they're not going to process study permits for students who are applying to a particular DLI if that DLI remains non-compliant. So it's essentially giving them, what they want is a little bit more authority in order to do that. So currently DLIs are managed at the provincial level, not at the federal level. And then the other thing is a lack of mandatory reporting for changes. So essentially, some of the same things that I just mentioned. So one of the things that IRCC is not able to confirm, I would say thoroughly with DLIs, is the attendance. So attendance by international students. So they want to make sure that they have the mechanism in place where they can receive accurate and credible information from DLIs in a timely manner in order to regulate this particular program. And then the other thing that they want to change is the number of hours that international students can work without needing a work permit, obviously. So working off campus, currently that's set at 20 hours and they want to change that. So I'll just go over some of the proposed changes. Okay. So they want to increase the number of hours. So I think this is a good move for international students. So they want to increase the number of hours that international students can work to ensure that they can still take care of themselves and have all that they will need or have sufficient income coming in while they study in order to meet the cost of living requirements that they will incur. So they want to bring the numbers to be more consistent with other countries. For example, one of the countries that they're kind of basing their numbers off of is Australia. So like in Australia, international students can work up to 48 hours every 2 weeks. So what Canada is now proposing is to increase the number of hours that international students can work from 20 hours to 24 hours per week. So that will allow international students to maybe assume a three-day work week. So maybe like 3 8-hour shifts, right, for the week, depending on, you know, their work schedules, essentially. So that's definitely a move in the right direction for international students. The other change that they are making is, as I mentioned before, the issue was with some DLIs. So they will require mandated DLI compliance. So it's 20 hours, currently it's 20 hours per week. They'll be increasing that, or the proposed amendment is to increase that to 24 hours. So the other one will be for DLI reporting. So this will definitely have some implications for students as well. They want to have due process for, you know, dealing with DLIs that are non-compliant. They want to make it mandatory for certain DLIs to report, all DLIs really, to report to IRCC. And also for program verification and also student enrollment. So like attendance verification, right? So the proposed amendments would require that study permit holders in Canada who receive a letter of acceptance from a DLI. So if you received a letter of acceptance from a DLI to come to Canada, your study permit was issued, you've come to Canada, and essentially you will not be able to just change your DLI when you get to Canada, or maybe you're doing your program at a particular institution and you decided that you want to go to another institution, you don't want to continue with that institution for whatever reason. With the new changes, well, currently you would not need to apply for a new study permit if that's the situation, right? But with the proposed changes, if a student wants to change their DLI, they will need to apply for a new study permit, right? So that's going to be a major change. So they'll need to submit a new application for a study permit before starting a new program with another institution. So this will, of course, require students to really think carefully and before making that decision to switch and all of that. Because remember, when you are applying for a new study permit, even from inside Canada, you still need to provide all of the documents that you would have used, or similar documents, right, that you would have used in your initial application. One being proof of funds. So when you are in Canada, you still need to demonstrate that you have sufficient funds to continue to study and to, you know, embark on this other program that you want to now switch to, right? So it will definitely have implications for study permit holders. And not because you are in Canada and you're switching your program, it doesn't necessarily mean that IRCC has to approve your study permit. Okay, so care must be taken. I would highly recommend getting professional advice if you are in that situation once these changes become effective. So with the requirement to obtain a new study permit in order to change your institution, they do allow you to continue your studies. So once you have applied for the new study permit, then you could start at the new institution. However, you still need to wait for your study permit to be approved, right? It doesn't mean that your study permit has been approved, but it allows you to continue studying. They also will require like certain dependents. So for example, maybe you have a dependent child who is attending maybe high school, maybe secondary school in Canada, and that child is gonna be moving from secondary to post-secondary studies, what will now happen is you will need to get a letter of acceptance for that child to move from one level to the next. And then, of course, based on what they're mentioning, of course, that will be based on the proposed changes that would result in a new application for a study permit. So essentially, with the amendments to the regulations that they're proposing, it would require existing conditions. So they would also change the conditions on the study permits. So whereas when your study permit is issued at the port of entry, when you come to Canada, they will have like certain standard conditions that will be on that study permit. With the new changes or the proposed changes, there will be additional conditions. So one of which will be that you have to remain enrolled with the DLI that's listed on your study permit, right? Until you complete your studies. And then if you are to change programs, that study permit becomes invalid, which is where you will now need to apply for a new study permit. So even if there's an expiry date, like a later date on the study permit in terms of the validity of the document, the moment that you decide to change schools, that document becomes invalid. And if it is invalid, then it means you no longer have status, right? So care will have to be taken where that's concerned. So as I mentioned, these are proposed amendments, and they are currently in a 30-day consultation period. That 30-day consultation period will be ending, I think it's July 29th. After which IRCC will consider the feedback they would have received during that time, and they will, take the next steps accordingly to implement the policy. They may make changes depending on the feedback, they may not. So that's what's happening currently. And I think those are some major changes, especially for those who are in Canada who might be looking to change your DLI, because previously it was just an easy change, and then you would inform IRCC, that you have changed institution. Very, very easy process. Now you will need a full-on study permit application in order to do that. So pretty significant. All right, guys, I only have a couple minutes left, and I will just be taking, let me just see if I can see the questions that are here. I'll just be taking some questions, just a few questions. Is there a cutoff point for study permit for September? There's not like a date that's set in stone, but I mean, you just have to look at depending on where you're applying from, for example. I mean, right now, I would think that it would be late if you're applying for a study permit now for September, as there won't be any guarantee that you'll get your study permit in time to start school for September, but there's no hard and fast cutoff date. But based on the processing times, you know that it's late, right? Please give info on PNP programs. Well, I went through some of the recent PNP draws. I mean, I guess if you want more information about PNP programs, 2 options. So we are actually having a webinar on August 5th. I believe that is the date. We'll post a registration link in the stories, or you can send us send a DM for information on registration. So we'll be having a webinar on August 5th and 6th. So I mean, that would be I think, an opportunity for you to join and learn more about PNP programs. Otherwise, if you want to have your individual profile assessed for eligibility for PNPs, 2 options. You can go on our website, complete a pre-assessment form, and my team will get back to you, or you can schedule a one-on-one consultation where we can review your eligibility in more detail. So Janine, you're asking if you complete a 1-year program, decide to start another 1-year program at a DLI, but your study permit is not yet expired. So under the current regime, you can do that. That's not an issue. You just need to inform IRCC that you have, you're doing another program, right, with another DLI. However, depending on when you do that, so with these proposed changes, what they're saying is that if you're doing something like that, you will need to apply for a new study permit. Of course, it's proposed, so it's not yet law, it's not yet effective, but that's where they're going. Okay, let me see. Any more questions here? I think most of these I've gone through. Yeah, I think I've gone through most of those. Are there options for teachers in Canada for permanent residents? So one of the, I can definitely say, especially with some of the proposed changes that IRCC is looking to make for Express Entry, for example, those are actually not yet announced, but I know based on the consultations that are happening, one of the areas that they want to focus on, like in their category draws, will be education. So I would say what I could recommend where teachers are concerned, there are no specific programs at the moment, but there are other general programs that you could consider. And then also in the Express Entry system, one of the categories that we see being focused on is STEM, right? So if you're in that STEM category, then by all means, you at least want to be represented in the Express Entry system. So that would be my recommendation. Feel free to visit our website and you can complete an evaluation there. You can complete the free assessment on our website to see if you may be eligible for any particular program and go from there. For the Alberta Enforcement Program, I actually touched on it in our last live last week, so I would recommend going back to that live and watching that. I did talk briefly about that particular program. And then so for some of the other questions, what I would recommend is some of them might be very case specific. So in those cases, what I would recommend is to schedule a consultation if you're looking for specific guidance and support on more complex issues. And I think I have I've responded to most of the questions there. For those that I haven't been able to respond to, feel free to send a DM or send an email to admin@nccanadaimmigration.com. Visit our website, complete a pre-assessment form, or you can schedule a consultation on our website as well for one-on-one guidance. And thank you guys once again for joining. I hope you found this information helpful. pay very close attention, especially if you are a current international student or one that will be coming to Canada, because you never know what might happen, and you know, circumstances may require you to change your DLIs for various reasons, and you want to be aware of the legislation and any changes that will, you know, will be enacted potentially, right? So you want to make sure that you're aware. And as I said, if you are in Canada, you're on your postgrad work permit, ensure that you are aware of your options. And if you're not, reach out to us. You should be proactively planning. So don't see that 1 year that you have on your work permit as a very long time for you to figure it out. It might not be, right? So unless you have a defined strategy, okay? And for those who are outside Canada, go ahead, visit our website, complete a pre-assessment on the website, and then we can guide you further. Like I said, alternately, you can also visit the consultation page on the website and schedule a one-on-one consultation where we can guide you further as it relates to options for coming to Canada. And that's where I leave you guys this evening. Have a good evening, take care, and I'll see you guys next time.